Are you caring for a loved one with dementia and dreading the holidays? Are you already overwhelmed and worried that the changes in routine and perhaps family arguments will make your life even more stressful than it already is? Well, help is here. Expert advice on setting realistic expectations and getting everyone in the family on board with the plan. That's all up next on Still Time for Joy, where we share practical advice for weathering life's storms and inspiring stories of resilience. Hello, I'm Sandra Levine, host of Still Time for Joy. My guest today is Deb Hallisey, a caregiver advocate and certified dementia practitioner. Welcome to the show, Deb.
Thanks, Sandra. It's good to see you again.
And you as well. So we love providing practical tips on the show, and that's what you do with your work through Advocate for Mom and Dad. So the holidays are coming. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, and many others can be an extra stressful time for caregivers. But really, this is just a part of a bigger picture in that once you become a caregiver for someone with dementia, everything changes. Isn't that true?
Completely. Your life is going to change completely, but the good news is it kind of changes incrementally. And so you have the opportunity to kind of learn and grow as you go along. It's interesting because for a while they continue to be the person that they used to be, and then as time goes on, things changes. And so we have to adapt to that. And that means adapting everything in our life, including holidays and traditions.
Yes, though the holidays can be stressful for everyone. Family gatherings can be stressful, all the preparations, all the shopping, all the obligations really. In what way does dementia make the holidays even more stressful?
The holidays are bound by traditions, not just family traditions, but kind of those hallmark holidays that everybody sees on TV. And there's that pressure and expectation that that is going to be a perfect day. And it's not. Especially, it's not going to be a not if you have someone with dementia. It's not going to be a perfect day. And so those expectations that we put on ourselves and other people put on us really need to be understood and changed, very much so. Or you're going to find that the holidays are so stressful on not just you, but your person you're caring for, that it can take weeks for them to come back to normal. And that is not something a caregiver needs to have in their life.
Now, you have 5 tips and strategies for helping to keep things on the rails during the holidays. And number 1 is to use clear and effective communication. What do you mean by that? And why is that extra important when dementia's in the mix?
Well, first of all, especially in the early stage, people with dementia are really good at hiding where they're kind of, you know, downgrading in terms of memory and skill set. And so if people are coming to the holiday celebration that haven't seen them in a while, they're going to say, "What are you talking about? They're not. They're fine," right? Because they can get through that day. So in the early stage, you very much might have pushback by other people in terms of, "I don't know what you're talking about," et cetera, et cetera. But as time moves on, you really need to modify what the holidays are going to look like, because having many, many people around and all of the hubbub and all of the change in routine really does throw them off. And like I said, it can take several weeks them for them to get back to a normal routine, which means your whole life is off for those several weeks.
So you really have to advocate for yourself as the caregiver because you're the one that has the difficult job all the time. And for some family members, the holidays may be the only time they see the person with dementia. And you're right. They may say, she seems fine. I don't know what you're talking about, right?
And it's interesting because we advocate for the person with dementia, but in this case, you're advocating for both of yourselves, because by advocating for the person with dementia and setting up the holidays to be successful for them, you're setting up the holidays to be successful for yourself as well. And it really does mean that you need to have clear and intentional communications with family member or friends who may be visiting.
So, your number 2 tip is to stick to your loved one's routine. Why is that so important? What can happen if you change the routine of somebody with dementia?
If they are used to taking a nap at a certain point in time, then keeping that nap is really important because that's going to make them not only feel safe and comfortable, but they're going to be behaving in ways that is not acting out. So, keeping their routine of when they eat or when they nap or activities they may do during the day makes them feel safe. And that's really, really key for them to be able to function in the day and through the holiday.
And the caregiver can be the one who knows their routine the best. And you talked to me when we spoke earlier about a good way to set expectations and let the family know about the routine, and that's writing a letter. What could you say in that letter to help people understand what to expect?
I think that's so important because if you don't set expectations for the people who are coming, in their mind, the holiday is going to be exactly the same. And so in that letter, you're going to want to say, okay, you're going to see these changes in mom, and I'm going to ask you, please don't correct her if she doesn't have the right month that mom and dad were married. You're going to see that she can't sit very long. And so we're going to have to modify maybe how long dinner is. Maybe we have appetizers, get up and do something, and then have dinner. You're going to see that a lot of people are overwhelming for her. And so, we need to make sure that there's not too much activity going on. I think it's important that they understand the disease and how it affects the person that they love. Getting them to understand that the senses change, sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch are all altered. And so you may expect them to say or be thrilled about, a particular smell that's happening, and they may not interact or act in the way you expect them to. You may have made what was their favorite part of the meal, but their tastes have changed and now they don't want it, or maybe they won't eat it, and because it's unfamiliar to them. Understanding what their daily routine is important as well. And so if mom gets up and goes into the other room to watch TV, it's because her favorite show is on and she knows that, and that's what she's going to do. So in general, the biggest thing is this is what's changed since you've seen your person last. This is what's new for them, and this is how it affects the way they're going to behave.
In your experience, do you find that that type of letter is welcomed by other family members, or what is the reaction to such a letter that you've heard?
Sometimes, sometimes. If you're the youngest and you're sending it to the whole family and the oldest sibling gets it, they may go back to that family of origin, like, don't tell me, I'm the oldest, right? If they're in denial, like mom doesn't, it's just, she's just forgetful. She doesn't, or dad doesn't have dementia, she's just forgetful. And so, they may not receive it well, but that's where you become an advocate for yourself and saying, I know this is hard to hear, but this is the reality I live with. And I need you to be my care partner. And my care partner respects what mom needs, and this is what she needs.
Excellent advice. Excellent. And I hope for anyone who writes that letter that it goes well. So, your number 3 tip is to downsize the group. So, perhaps for families that were used to having 20, 25, 30 people around the table, that may not go so well anymore when your loved one has dementia. Bigger groups can be overwhelming. So, what's a better idea?
Yeah. Oh, I can pretty much guarantee that's not going to go well, particularly if you've on top of that changed the routine. Truly, the joy is in being together with the person the person you're caring for and other family members, but it doesn't have to be a huge gathering, but have a series of parties. First of all, they're not going to necessarily know what day is Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever. And so having smaller groups that celebrates it over and over and over again can be joyful because in that smaller group you can interact with that person. Whereas in a larger group, they're probably going to get quiet. They're going to sit because the stimulation, like the hearing changes so much and the sight changes so much that the stimulation of all those people running around, especially if there's little kids, you think, oh, grandma wants to see the kids. Yeah, maybe not all in one fell swoop. You're better off with a smaller crowd that she can maybe have one sit on her lap or whatever. But it's really the overstimulation. And on top of that, they may not remember you. So having multiples of people that they don't remember is really, really scary. You're better off having smaller groups because then you can bring memories back of what it was like with just you and mom or just you and grandma. And that's going to be successful for everybody.
And your number 4 tip is to pick the best time for success. So in my family, we always had Christmas dinner. But for people with dementia, where things may start going south, the later in the day you go, what's a better idea? And what does happen often for people with dementia as the day goes on?
Well, what often happens is they get agitated and start to pace. They can't sit. Maybe they're talking out loud, a bunch of nonsense. And it's interesting because they're not really sure what causes some downing, other than it might be the change in light. So, one of the things to do would be to close the blinds and then change the light bulb so they mimic daylight much better. But that's not the only thing that causes it. And so if you're used to having family dinner or going to evening church services together, if they're going to sundown, that is not the time you want to be there. You want to do it earlier in the day, at lunch or at brunch. Maybe as a family you do online services, or some go to Christmas and the rest of the family do online. But it gets back to what's their routine and what is going to make them feel safe. And the best time of day for them is the best time of day for everyone to be successful.
So, do you find in your work with families when people propose, okay, I propose we have Christmas brunch this year because it's a better time of day for mom, and they list all these reasons. Do you find that family members are understanding, or do people get a lot of pushback? And if you get a lot of pushback, how should you handle it?
You're back to it depends on the family. I think you're going to get some pushback because you're changing traditions. And there's always some level of denial for the people who are not day to day with that person. The level of pushback is probably going to be different depending upon the person. And so, one person you may be able to say, I know this is really hard. This is a change, but this is what we need. And through conversation, you can get to that negotiation and say, okay, all right, I'll do it. And then there's going to be somebody who just really doesn't want to do it. And that's when you just have to say, I'm not asking for permission, which is something I think as caregivers we do often, especially dementia caregivers. We wait for permission. There comes a point in time where you no longer can. You simply say, this is what we're doing. I hope you'll join us.
Yes, advocating for oneself in addition to your loved one, something we have to learn as caregivers. So, your number 5 tip is to delegate duties. So, if I'm the primary caregiver, should I be hosting the big holiday meal? And if I am, what should my
Yeah,
guests be doing?
right. I think being a host depends on your person. Certainly in the earlier stages, going someplace that may be somewhat still familiar to them won't be a problem. But in the later stages, taking them out of their environment may very much be something that makes them agitated, or really the behaviors change. And so, if you're going to host, we're back to don't host just one, but we're back to it doesn't need to be you doing everything. Ask somebody to bring something. I mean, you could even ask somebody to come earlier in the day and set the table. I'm going to be with mom doing these things. I need you to come and do this. I'll have everything out and ready for you, along with cooking. But part of it is too, and this speaks to the letter, while you're there, what is the best way to interact with your mom or your dad or whoever that is? I've got a picture book. Would you sit down and look through the picture book while I'm finishing getting dinner prepared. Mom's really loving music these days. Would you just sit down and listen to music with her or watch her favorite TV? She doesn't have the concentration anymore to play cards, so we're not going to do that at the end of the meal. Instead, we're going to do a sing-along, because music is really something that brings her out of her shell and gets her to engage with people. So, that also would go into the letter as well, as how are you going to interact along with, this is the help that I need from you. And maybe it's saying, I know you love your carrot salad recipe, but mom no longer eats carrots, so just be aware of that. And if you want to bring something else, I'm fine with that as well. So speaking to the caregivers, what that partially means is letting go of control, which we are not always good at, right? So if someone suggests something to bring, say yes gratefully. It doesn't have to be everything that you want or everything you had in the past as well in the traditional dinner.
Excellent advice. So people can help with the shopping, they can help with the cooking, they can bring dishes to help, they can help with the cleanup, and most important, they can interact with your loved one with dementia and spend quality time with them. So we've talked a lot about how as a caregiver you can make the holidays better for not just yourself, but your loved one and the entire family. What about the caregiver at the holidays? Family members may ask, what do you want for Christmas? What do you want for Hanukkah? What's a good idea, perhaps, for a caregiver rather than another bathrobe and slippers?
Yeah. I think for many caregivers, what they want back is some time. They really want back some time for themselves. And so, saying you could pay for an extra day or an extra afternoon of the caregiving help that comes in so I can go to lunch with my friends. If you could come over and do that as well. Sometimes family doesn't live close by and that's not a possibility. I think very much what they want back is time for themselves. And it's interesting because everybody talks about the mani-pedi and things like that, but really, I think the biggest gift a caregiver could give themselves is setting boundaries and asking for and saying yes to help. Because once you do that, you can actually go out to lunch or dinner, or you can go to a concert or whatever. And maybe what you just want is a bubble bath. Can you come over and stay for this hour or whatever, so I can just take care of myself for a little while? I'll be in the house in case there's something going on, but can you just come over and then let's bring dinner in so we don't have to cook, or let's plan on having dinner while watching a favorite holiday movie or the Peanuts Christmas Carol or whatever it is that you did as a family and like to do. You don't have to let go of all the traditions, but you do have to modify them. So maybe you're not going to wait till 8 o'clock till the show comes on TV, but you have it on tape so you can do it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Sure. So anything from as simple as a bubble bath to getting out to lunch to taking a day trip, and if it's possible, family could chip in so you could go away for even a little bit of a longer trip. But time for yourself, getting away, I can bet would be very high on a list for a caregiver of a loved one with dementia. Well, Deb Hallisey, you've provided so many wonderful tips for caregivers to try to make the holidays more successful, less stressful for our loved one and for ourselves. Thank you for all this wonderful advice, and thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me, and it's great to be with you.
If you found today's show helpful, please share the information with someone who needs it, and follow Still Time for Joy for more practical tips on weathering life's storms, as well as inspiring stories of people who have turned their pain into purpose. Please consider supporting the work that goes into producing the show on Patreon. Follow Sandra Levine Productions on Facebook and YouTube, and learn more at sandralevine.com.